Of Blood and Steel, written by Seymour Zainali, narrated by James Lawrence. Chapter 16. The Iron Trap. The streets quieted down, and there was a solemn feeling in the city. People who once chatted now passed one another in silence. Noise could be heard outside the walls as soldiers built siege weapons and sharpened their swords, a constant reminder of the inevitable. Children sat in the streets outside the keep, looking tired and frail, while their mothers and fathers waited for news. They settled down and conserved their energy, hoping that their lord had a plan. Mothers pulled their children closer and tried to comfort them. A young girl with a baby paced back and forth to comfort her screaming infant. A thin, short man surrounded by guards was headed towards the local inn. He was carrying a piece of paper in one hand and a wooden flute, a shvi, in the other. He stood on a wooden stoop and posted the document for everyone to see. He grabbed his shvi and released a loud whistling noise, drawing everyone's attention. "Until you hear otherwise, we cannot drink the water from the well. We will ration what supplies we have left, but you should spread it thin and make it last as long as possible. Although we have a few difficult days ahead, I have news that help is on its way, so we must stay calm. Amidan cavalry will reach the city within a few days." He then proceeded to repeat the same in Amidan. The mood lifted a little as the people returned to their daily routines. Arda and Balak stood next to each other and watched for a while before heading to the comfort of Balak's quarters. As they looked out from the window, the gates spread open and the Laverian herald entered the city and headed to the keep. "People are growing increasingly hungry. Good thing the cavalry is on their way. I wish they could arrive sooner. Time is not on our side," Arda said.
"On the contrary."
"You think?"
"I don't think. I know. They won't attack until they complete the siege weapons. At least we don't have to do the same here. But most importantly, the nights are getting colder with each passing day. It'll snow soon. Maybe then they will retreat."
"I hope you're right." The thin man entered Balak's quarters without knocking.
"Lord Anzor has negotiated a deal for all citizens and visitors of the Iron Gates to safely leave the city. Gather your belongings. You will be provided safe passage early tomorrow morning."
"That means you too, Balak." Arda turned toward him.
"It appears so."
"Where will you be heading?"
"I don't know yet."
The guard swiftly entered Balak's room, headed towards Arda, and bent his knee.
"My lady," he began, "I am honored to be escorting you to Shirak."
"The old capital? But why?"
"Orders of Lord Anzor. We will be leaving first thing in the morning. Please, follow me. We need to pack your belongings."
Balak tried not to make eye contact with Arda as she headed toward the door with the guard.
"Arda, wait!"
He startled her. "Yes, Balak?"
"Nothing."
"Well, wherever you decide to go, I wish you a safe journey," Arda said, and they went their separate ways. Balak rose early the next day. The streets outside were still. Soldiers patrolled them, and Balak listened as they marched by. He put on his clothes and packed his belongings. He still didn't have much, but he had plenty of coin, which he concealed beneath his armor. Once he passed the gates, he would be a free and wealthy man. He took the last sip of his ale and headed onto the street and into the hustle and bustle. He bore witness to families running back and forth, gathering their belongings, men and teens armored up to defend the castle. Some of the older men opted to stay as well. He passed a woman with her children. The children cried as they held their grandparents for the last time. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw one family that didn't have much to carry. It was an old lady with her young boy who was covered in mud and dirt. Balak approached them slowly and offered them his coin. The old lady thanked Balak when suddenly 2 more beggars appeared in front of him, asking for money. Some beggars were kind, asking if Balak could spare a few coins so they could buy some medicine and food. Others were hostile, nearly grabbing the silver straight out of Balak's hands. Soon he was surrounded by beggars, and his patience was tested until he snapped, caught one beggar grabbing his coins, and lifted the man by his throat. Everyone looked at Balak in shock and quickly dispersed. Having a little breathing room, Balak relaxed and put the man down, then let him go with the coins he had taken. He then climbed up on the curtain wall and watched civilians leaving the castle. The crowd of people passed through the enemy camp, seemingly without being bothered. Balak heard someone approach on his left and turned his head to witness Lord Anzor heading directly toward him.
"Your Majesty,"
Balak said as he lowered his head.
"So, you are the man who assured the safety of my niece?"
He spoke in the common tongue.
"Yes, you could say that."
"You must be proud of your accomplishments. Your name will be fixed on the mountains."
"Only they will be wrong. I did it for coin."
"You mean the coin you gave away? I saw what you did earlier today."
"I don't know what you mean."
"You don't have to hide behind lies. I didn't expect such generosity from a—"
"Barbarian?"
"I was going to say Carbadian. People frequently confuse generosity for weakness. My father kept dogs around when my brother and I were just kids. I always liked animals, so I quickly grew attached to my newfound friend. Roland, I called him. What a nice companion he was. We used to play from sunrise till sundown. I don't recall how, but I remember he got lost somewhere in the forest one time. When we finally found him, he was dirty, feral, and hungry. I was just a naive little boy and rushed to give Roland some food. He took a bite of the meat, and my hand along with it."
Lord Anzor pulled off his glove and exposed a large beaten chunk of his hand to Balak.
"It healed over the years, but the scar remained. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Being in charge means making harsh decisions. Food in one hand and a whip in the other. This is the line we have to balance every day, be it a king or a peasant."
He finished and began heading back to the armory.
"Lord Anzor, what did you do to the dog?"
asked Balak while Anzor was still in his sights. The lord turned around.
"I kept him,"
he answered.
"Wouldn't it have been easier to replace it?"
"It would, but you can't replace the people. You have to learn to work with what you are given."
Later that day, Balak was in the armory, where the only source of light came through the arrow slits. He watched old and young men dressing up in armor of varying quality and extent.
"You drop this,"
said a voice to a nearby boy. The boy lifted his head and saw Lord Anzor in all his royal glory. He accepted the sword and bowed his head.
"Thank you, my lord."
"What is your name, child?"
asked Anzor.
Garin Ozanian,"
mumbled the child.
"Are you afraid, Garin?"
"No, my lord,"
the child responded with uncertainty and lowered his head. Lord Anzor knelt and put an arm on the child's left shoulder.
"It is natural to be afraid. Bravery is not defined by the lack of fear. Bravery is when you are afraid and still push forward."
Just then, Arda was passing through the armory and was shocked to see Balak.
"Balak, I didn't know you were staying."
"I didn't know either."
"Well, I'm glad to see you standing up to protect all these people."
"I'm not doing it for all of them, only for 2.
Arda smiled and hugged Balak.
"I will be right beside you,"
she told him.
"Is that right?"
"I am ready to fight,"
she said as she picked up a bow and struggled to pull the string.
Easy now. Be careful with that thing.
Balak gestured toward the bow.
I know you mean well, but being with the child is the best place you can be, he added.
You mean the safest. I can do a lot more than that. You know that.
Yes, which is why you should stay near her. You will be her last line of defense.
Do you hear that?
Arda asked.
Must be coming from the outside.
Balak rushed toward the top of the curtain wall.
Is it happening? Is the battle starting?
Arda questioned. They both looked into the distance, watching the enemy camp. The citizens were getting killed now as they tried to pass through. Balak and Arda stood on the curtain wall as they heard people getting slaughtered in the distance. The survivors started running back toward the castle. Some had already made it through and headed directly toward the mountains, vanishing in the distance.